Should be live. And we are live.
We are live.
Yes.
Hello, and welcome to Legalized Robbery Podcast with myself, Jerry, the one and only, joining in with the Romanian stallion, Adrian. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, man. We had like a free day, but it started getting super hot in Romania, and yeah, it's a bit uncomfortable to be honest. That hot.
You know, I don't know what it's like in Romania, but the thing in London is just like having this amount of heat. Um, it's just unsettling. Like it doesn't feel like, like London heat versus say Portugal or something like that, and the same temperature is completely different. Or Africa.
I think it's
So
about the humidity because I think
yeah,
humidity actually amplifies the whole feeling of the temperature. So yeah,
and the wind I think as well.
wind as well. Yeah, but I think usually wind is more relevant for colder temperature, but maybe it works for higher temperature as well.
I just remember when I was in Ghana and there was a lot of wind mixed in, so you didn't feel
Mhm.
too much of the heat. But yeah,
Mhm.
now I think we had some rain, so it's a little better now. You can like sort of relax a little bit more. But all in all, it's been quiet, I think. But you
Mhm.
went to the woods, right? Or
Yeah,
like,
we went to the mountains. It wasn't very high. It was like 1,600 meters, but
okay.
it was good enough that it was cold. We actually got a bit of rain, but that's no problem. I honestly prefer a bit of rain and a bit of chill rather than just heat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially if you're hiking, you're
yeah,
using too much energy the
hmm
whole time, right? You want some a little bit of sort of temperature to even out um,
exactly.
all of the energy you're using. But yeah, cool. Now we jump right into it.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I think you wanted to talk about the report that came out recently that has made sort of massive rounds in regards to teen spending,
hmm
particularly regarding cell phone usage and other technology. So, what did you learn?
Okay, so this is a report made. I think it's either annually or half a year by Piper
Right.
Sandler, and they basically question, like, I think in this case it was like 7,000 teenagers in the U.S. about their consumption habits, and in the whole ecosystem we are right now with crypto and Tesla and other, let's say Microsoft, with these big brands and big companies, like, we focus on so many things like metrics, financials, the Fed, whatever, but in the end I think one of the most relevant aspect of everything is who consumes what. And I think when you look at teens, you can basically kind of like get a glimpse of the future, like what's gonna be going well in the future, right? So I
Right.
was I was quite surprised about the numbers. So and the information in general. To be honest, this is the first time I'm reading it. So honestly, if it was super similar in the past, I wouldn't know because this is the first time I'm looking at it. But when I looked at it, I was like, okay, this is quite interesting. Like some of the aspects have actually surprised me.
Okay.
The first thing is, apparently, out of these teens, 33% of them are currently employed in part time. I think that's pretty healthy. Like, I would expect. I mean, for example, like, if I compare that to Romania, I don't think anybody is working as a teen. Like, seriously, maybe just like a super small percentages of people actually work when they're young in Romania, from my experience, except if you like actually need the money. If you cannot
Mhm.
sustain yourself financially otherwise, only then do you work. Like, mostly everybody else, just like their parents give them money, right? So
Right.
in this kind of surprised me, this percentage. Now, I know you also not necessarily like fashion, but I know you're interested in fashion as well. I think you spoke to me regarding the topic a few times, and I'm just not kind of interested in it, but I think it's relevant to mention it because it is a
Absolutely.
part of the economy, and it came out
Huge
in this
industry.
report.
It's illegal to be naked in the street, right?
Yeah, you kind of have to be dressed, so yeah, you should talk about it, I guess. Uh, what clothing brand do you think is the biggest one?
Um, As in the most popular or the most revenue or profit or
No, no,
whatever.
no. Strictly in the context of this report.
I don't actually. I didn't actually. I didn't actually see any stats in regards to this
Yeah, no,
report.
no, no. I'm just asking, what do you think would be the most
My
popular one?
my broad guess would be like Louis Vuitton, being
Uh,
the biggest, and then having maybe like, damn, maybe like H&M, Primark,
it's
but
US, dude.
US.
There's no Primark and H&M in US. I mean, there might be some H&M, but no. Yeah, let's just cut through the tension. It's Nike, and it's like 27%.
See, I should have thought of that.
Yeah, because I think you mentioned Nike a few times, right?
Yeah, I definitely mentioned Nike. I thought
Yeah.
Nike is incredibly interesting as a company because you could also you could almost make the claim that Mike is not that Nike is not a a clothing company, but that they are a video a video making company, because you look at the ads that they make and the amount of sort of cultural influence they have, and
Mhm.
they're playing a completely different game than a lot of other retailers in the same space. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, they're like a cultural company, right? Like
Exactly.
they're like a huge part of the whole pop culture that's going on. And actually, they're like 27% of the popularity. And the next entry is American Eagle with 7%. What I will say is interesting is that you have Lululemon on the list, and Lululemon, from my knowledge, is actually quite a recent company. Like I heard about it like last year for the first time, and they just make like athletic gear. But the fact that they're in this top, actually ahead of Adidas, for example, it's quite
Mhm.
surprising. So I'm gonna look a bit into Lululemon after this and see what they're about because it looks interesting. Yeah, Nike is also like 56% of the whole footwear.
Mhm.
So Nike is kind of crushing it. So if you were ever wondering, then I'm gonna look a bit at restaurants. And the first entry in the restaurant list is a
Oh, by
company
the
you
way,
cannot. Yeah.
before you get into restaurants, in terms of Nike, the founder, Nick, is it Nick Knight? Yeah, Nick Knight has an incredible autobiography.
Mhm.
So is autobiography the one that's about yourself, or is it just biography? It might
I,
just be biography.
maybe. I think I heard about it, but I'm not sure right now.
Yeah, so basically, he wrote a book about how Nike came about, and
Hmm.
it's actually one of the best books, and it's written in such simple language. It's very accessible. He pretty much goes through his whole thought process, and it's very fun to read because he was doing a world journey before he started Nike, and
Hmm.
it was pretty much Nike was a result of that basically. It was a I think it was a dissertation or his last work at uni,
Hmm.
and he thought of the idea of combining Japanese running clothing, running shoes with American running shoes, and then that sort of marriage came about. And
That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
he just executed on that. So to anybody that would like sort of a very cool book on how Nike was created, and just in general, just very inspiring story. Check out Shoe Dog by
Oh yeah, I heard
the
about it.
founder of Nike. Yeah.
I heard about it. Also, I'm not sure. Was it Raul Paul or Jack Dorsey who said that the best investment you can make in yourself is actually traveling, which I think is kind of
Ooh.
controversial in terms of ROI. But yeah, it's nonetheless an interesting view on things, right?
Yeah, I mean, what are you getting all this money for, so to say, if it's not to spend it on something worthy of spending it,
Yeah,
you
but
know?
he said investing. So if you want to talk about the experience, I totally agree. But when you say
Oh,
investing, you mean investing, and I'm like, really, really.
I think
So
he's talking more about ROI. He's expanding the definition of ROI. You know,
oh yeah,
um,
maybe.
And if you expand the definition of ROI, then it could be anything really. Then it's anything that makes you feel, better.
Yeah.
But I agree. If we're talking purely investing, then it doesn't make much sense. But
except for the guy who made Nike, right? Apparently it worked out for him, so
you
he
never
definitely
know.
confirms the thesis. Yeah.
Yeah. But you were talking about restaurants, right?
Oh yeah. So the first entry on the list is a restaurant which isn't publicly listed, if I'm not mistaken, and that's Chick-fil-A.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's
Yeah.
like 18%. That's a pretty big chunk.
Yeah.
It's actually more popular than Starbucks, Chipotle, Dunkin' Donuts, and dude, McDonald's isn't even on the list. Where is McDonald's,
What?
man? Yeah, I'm serious. I'm genuinely surprised. Like, it's not on this list.
It's a
I,
different
I
world over there.
yeah, no, I suppose that everybody in America eats McDonald's, especially young people, but apparently they're not. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but there were interesting stuff regarding. Let me just find it. Okay, yeah, plant-based meat. I found it. So
Yes.
15% of them consumed plant-based meat, with Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat tied as the number one choice.
Okay.
So that,
Can we go back again to what this age range is and how it's divided and so forth, just to get more clarity for the listeners and viewers.
okay, so 1 second. Okay, so it's about Gen Z.
So let me just see.
It's about Gen Z, starting with Gen Z basically. And again, it's semi-annual, so it's twice a year, and yeah, it's 7,000 US teens.
So Gen Z is the newest generation, born between
Yeah,
1997 and 2012 and 15.
yeah.
So those are people that are anywhere between 6 and 24 years old. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What's even more interesting is that Chick-fil-A is the biggest restaurant, so to say, that they go to. But Chick-fil-A is also very conservative. I think it's really popular knowledge there that Chick-fil-A is always closed on Sundays.
Really?
Because of like sort of Christian values. And
I think I've heard something like this before.
Kanye made a song that's called is it called Closed on Sunday?
Okay.
It's like closed on Sundays, you want Chick-fil-A or some shit like that.
Oh, okay.
and yeah, obviously Kanye went through this whole, or is still going through this whole sort of gospel thing. So yeah, I find that interesting that Gen Z goes to Chick-fil-A, and so, on that same sort of thing, Gen Z are probably very atheist, I'd say. Interesting. Yeah, but go
on. Yes, 1 second. Let me just go back. This was interesting. Okay. Another interesting stuff was, for example, 9% of them traded cryptocurrency. That's not bad. That's a good adoption.
It's quite high. Yeah.
81% of them being male. So yeah, guys are more focused on the bank. Yeah, they're using the most common payment method used is Apple Pay, and the most common used payment app is Venmo.
Damn. Okay, Venmo's really big there then.
Yeah.
I wonder what the Europe equivalent is. For Venmo, probably PayPal.
I think it's Revolut. Honestly, at least in Eastern European countries, it's
actually
definitely Revolut.
PayPal is more the account they use to sort of receive eBay funds.
Yeah. Venmo is PayPal's application for this, but I don't know anybody that uses Venmo in Europe. No, I don't think you can even have it. I'm not sure. Yeah. I haven't tried. So yeah.
In the UK, Monzo's just very popular, which I
heard about it.
I was lucky to get in on the crowdfund.
Oh, really?
There, yeah. But it was like at a later stage. Maybe they did like 2 or 3, and I got in there.
Mm-hmm.
And Monzo is very popular in the UK, to be honest. When you see people with these bright sort of bright orange cards in the UK, Monzo is behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
but the rest of Europe, if you include the rest of Europe, is like you said, Revolut's probably the
Yeah, I
biggest.
think Revolut.
Hmm.
Yeah. Another interesting thing is like they spend most of their time on Netflix, 32%, and then YouTube, 31%. So
Makes
in
sense.
terms of attention, although for example Netflix, I think we had discussions about Netflix, and I was telling you I'm not about their financials and stuff like that. They're definitely capturing a lot of their time, but the question is, are they monetization, monetizing it
Monetizing.
properly? Because
Hmm.
I mean, basically you can get a Netflix account and watch 100% of your time, and you're still just paying the subscription. So then,
Right.
how are they banking on this? Because they don't seem to be.
Yeah,
I think YouTube, from that perspective, YouTube does it much better, right? I mean, you have
absolutely.
you have the subscription, and if you don't, you have the ads. So from that perspective, I think it's a better deal for YouTube. But yeah.
The thing is, I think YouTube has very high usage and they're making a lot of money on their ads, but I don't think they make as much money on subscriptions as Netflix is making from subscriptions. I just don't know anybody that's using YouTube Music. I just know one random dude that's using YouTube Music. Like,
Yeah. Well.
but the other interesting thing is also on YouTube, the amount of people that don't use AdBlock and don't know that AdBlock exists is baffling. I
Yes.
had a friend over and he was using my laptop and he's like, "Yo, are you actually using YouTube Pro or whatever that is?" And I'm like,
Hmm.
"No, why would I?" And he's like, "Yeah, I thought you'd be using it because I have not seen any ads in the past 10 minutes." And I'm like, "Bro, are you not using AdBlock?"
Dude, I have this app on my phone. I actually gave it to some of my friends. It's called YouTube Advanced. It's on Android,
Yes.
and basically it blocks everything. And seriously, I used it for like a couple of months, and then when I used like a normal computer, I was like, "What is this? Why is this thing playing before the thing I'm trying to watch? What is this?" I was like, "Oh, dude,
Weird.
honestly, I forgot how that felt." I was like, "What? I don't want to watch this. Why is this appearing?" Yeah, dude. No, it's crazy. It's crazy from that perspective.
Yeah, it's like the feeling that you get when you're watching I guess as a millennial when you're watching TV again after like a long time that you haven't watched TV and you're like ads. Those things are so weird. Like, why would you sit through them and stuff?
Dude, they're so bad. You're like watching, and every like 25 minutes there's an ad break, and I'm like, why? No, seriously, it's super disruptive. Like the
Yeah,
whole mood of the movie, dude, it's bad.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
man.
Going forward, and this is actually the statistics. The statistic I actually did send you and surprised me by far the most was that 88% of these teens own an iPhone, and 90% of them expect an iPhone to be their next phone. Dude, that just killed me inside. I'm like, but yeah, I'm not connected to the teen world in the USA. That's for sure, for certain, because I wasn't expecting this. So
Yeah,
Apple is, dude, they're destroying everything. Come on, like,
Long Apple, man.
dude, I wouldn't want to buy anything from them, but like seriously, 90%, like that's not even debatable. It's not like
Yeah,
30. It's
yeah, they're
90%.
dominating the
Like,
space for sure.
absolutely, man. It's
And
it's kind of
the
incredible, to be honest.
absolutely, and it's incredible for Tim Cook to have taken that kind of charge and lead in such a way that Apple can continue and even get better. I
Yeah.
think that's a interesting thing about when a founder of a company goes and then a CEO sort of follows up, and the burden of proof is really on them to execute. And Tim Cook has been executing on on everything so far. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Apple will do next. We have rumors of an Apple car and all these things, and building a car is quite a bit different than building a phone. So
they've done some actually incredible technological feats. I'm not surprised they're actually able to build a car if when they because they are able. They're definitely able. The question is how cheap, how good, user experience. I'm expecting it to be immensely expensive, like three
Has
hundred
to be.
thousand expensive. Yeah,
It
dude.
has
But
to be.
who's
Yeah.
buying that? Seriously, who's buying that? But yeah.
I mean,
Anyways,
you look at Apple and they're already a sort of luxury product. So you have a lot of people that with discretionary income that can purchase that, and definitely will purchase a Apple car when it's out. So I wouldn't
yeah, but
underestimate that.
no,
But
I
here's
understand. Sorry. I understand people can like afford not to eat a whole month and then buy an apple. That's fine. I understand that. Like some people
right.
do that, right? They cannot actually afford it, but they make concessions in order to afford it. Okay, that I understand because it's a couple $100 or $1,000. It's not a small sum of money, but again, in a developed economy, maybe it's not that much. But come on, we're talking about at least $100,000. You have to love the brand, the experience, the whatever, a lot to give that money. I think.
And I think that's the didn't Warren Buffett say something like that? That the measure of whether or not a company's really good is how their customers react to price increases, and Apple hands down has been the most incredible in that space. They increase the price on everything and they still get bought. It's crazy. I think that there was a graph even showing that the market the market value of AirPods, and it was beating so many things, like entire
Hmm.
industries,
I,
just the
I, I
AirPods.
we would need to check this because honestly, from my knowledge, the whole smartphone market has gone up in prices just as a general. So flagships from Samsung or even like OnePlus, they're also around the $1,000 range. And so there are other flagships which are equally as expensive. They're not as mass sold as iPhones. That's a totally different story. But the market itself is a bit more expensive now. So there's that.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if you could actually sim sort of give a rebuttal to that as simple as that, because Apple has always increased their cell phone costs by quite a bit. And I mean, we wouldn't have to argue the fact that everybody complains about how expensive iPhones are and how expensive in general Apple products are, right?
Hmm. But dude,
So
like, yeah, go. Sorry.
yeah, so to me that would yeah, that would mean that Apple can successfully do that. Even though people complain, they still buy, and that's extremely bullish amongst other things for Apple. But not to sway away too far from what we were just talking about, but I think there's something really important and interesting to discuss or touch on briefly, which is that that I think Apple's sort of greatest contribution to civilization, I think they themselves say, is what they're planning to do is not in any tech sector, but in health.
With
And
the watch.
exactly. So they're working on different algorithms, different applications that help you track your health, but
Hmm.
also be able to read some statistics or some sort of any statistics that are sort of gathered on your
Hmm.
heartbeat
Hmm. Hmm.
and so forth, to be able to then tell or forecast whether or not you're going to get a stroke or something like that. And I
Hmm.
think we've heard plenty of stories where somebody or something happened to somebody, and then the Apple Watch detected something was wrong and called nine. Um, is it 999 or 911 in America?
911.
911. So all of these things they do indicate that Apple really wants to focus on health, and that would make it really interesting because even at Peloton, they Apple um, I believe Apple made it they made it so that some Peloton users were not able to connect their Bluetooth Apple Watch with the Peloton, and there's rumors that Apple is going to provide competitive products in the connected fitness competitive fitness market space. So who knows what's going to happen? But I just thought that was really interesting to add in for people that looking at
Definitely.
long-term prospects of Apple.
Yeah,
So,
but
yeah.
dude, and when you think about it, like the fact that we're talking about numbers regarding the smartphone, but the smartphone is nothing more than the device for the app. And
Right.
as we both know, Apple's main, I mean, not main revenue, but most of its revenues come from services. So, but like this, the whole Apple ecosystem, this is insane. Like they, again, I'm okay. Some people like their phones, that's fine. But on their phones, you can barely use any other applications rather than their own. So seriously, this is like super bullish for Apple. It's like any app they'll make, people will kind of default to that app in that space. There's not much you
And
can do.
this is a huge, I think this is, and this is the only problem that I can see Apple having future problems with, which is that the market cannot also be the seller, so to say. It's like the issue that you have with Amazon
Yeah.
marketplace, where
Mhm.
they offer the market, but they also then are the sellers. So you have Amazon Basics, and yeah, there's a few issues with that. Some might agree, some might disagree, but one thing is for sure: those products, they shouldn't be sort of pumped up to the first line, so to say. It shouldn't be what the customer. It shouldn't be the first thing that the customer sees. But in that regard, you can't really compare Apple to Amazon because it's software. So, but there's similarities there, and I
Oh, of
think
course.
I think those regulatory issues, they will then become issues for Apple in the future. But we'll see. They're also charging like almost extortionate fees in terms of creators on their platform, and that's where you see the issues that they have with uh, uh, gaming software like Epic
Mhm.
and so forth.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly.
we'll
Dude,
see.
I think, but yeah, and also, like I said, this is their phones. We're talking about their apps. And remember what
Right,
I said earlier, the top payment method was Apple Pay. So, and they're getting a fraction of all those payments. So,
hitting so many vectors,
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's insane. Like, yeah,
And
they,
the other thing about Apple as well is that they once you get into their ecosystem, right? It pulls you in. So you get an Apple phone, then you want to get a Mac, then you want to get an Apple Watch, then you want to get the what's the newest thing is there's some kind of dongle or something that you can
I don't know.
attach to your Apple Watch or your AirPods or whatever. So it's really hard to beat them, man. And now they're playing into privacy, which is also brilliant for a company as
Yeah,
big as that. So kudos to Tim Cook for sure. I'm excited to see what's next.
yeah, yeah. The last thing I wanted to touch here was first off, their favorite social media platform is Snapchat, followed by TikTok and then Instagram.
Interesting,
Yeah.
interesting for sure. Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not surprised. Social media is definitely not my stuff. So I'm not surprised. I heard about all of them, so that's a win for myself. But yeah, I mean the trend, I don't think the trend is surprising. We heard like this like 5 years ago that people are moving from text to images to videos to recordings. So this is nothing but the happening of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting statistics. I would be curious to see what it was in the past and how these trends are progressing.
hmm Well, TikTok
Yeah,
wasn't in the list just a few years ago. That's what's crazy.
yeah,
TikTok just
TikTok
popped
is
out of
new.
nowhere,
I
and
think they removed the ban on it in the US and they're trying, I think they might be getting listed publicly in the US if I'm not mistaken.
wow,
ByteDance.
yeah, yeah. Because I remember Trump really
Exactly.
going hard against that, but I think it's all becoming reversed now. So we'll see. We'll see.
Mhm.
I certainly think, well, social media, obviously, a lot of people want to argue the disadvantages of it, and they probably do outweigh the benefits.
Mhm.
I think there was one popular documentary that everybody has seen in terms of,
Yeah, the
yeah,
social
just
dilemma, right?
the social dilemma. Yeah. So I think it's a widely held view that social media is damaging in many aspects, but I'm quite optimistic on people that are able to use social media as a tool, because when you then use it as a tool, you have a completely different experience. You're following certain people that are doing certain things. Say, you're an engineer student, and then you just follow like a bunch of engineering channels. Your experience
Yeah,
is going to be
for
much
sure.
different than the guy that's going to follow all of his friends and their friends and so forth. So yeah.
But it's an uphill battle on any platform. Like,
Yeah.
I go on YouTube, I'm watching programming videos or like architectural patterns and stuff, and in like three in in 3 videos, I'm back to UFC with some knockout highlights. I'm like, how did I get here? Like, I swear I was watching some programming stuff. And dude, seriously, sometimes the autoplay function in certain videos is crazy. Like, it goes
Yeah.
from A to Z like in a flash, and I'm like, how did it get here? Like, seriously, how did
It
it get
knows
here?
it knows us too well, man. It knows us too well.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see.
The last point here was that they allocated 8% of their shopping to secondhand, and yeah, half have sold, half had bought. But I think it's interesting. Again, we don't have the longitudinal data. I mean, I don't, but probably we'll get it in the future. But I think this is interesting. Like, maybe they're becoming a bit more thrifty, which is not bad. Like, I think being a bit thrifty is a good characteristic. Like,
Oh yeah.
buying everything you have and like want to buy as new, sometimes it's not worth it. Like, for example, you want to start something, you want to do something, buying always the newest equipment at a full price, I don't think is the best solution. So I think them being a bit more thrifty, maybe since they're trading a bit of crypto now, maybe they're becoming a bit more financially savvy. So I think that might be good for the future.
Yeah. And the sharing economy comes in there as well. I think Gen Z is sort of more leaning towards the sharing economy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
sharing car sharing is
Mm-hmm.
going up. Um, Vintage clothing is going up,
Mm-hmm.
and all of this also leans towards being more green. The issue
Mm-hmm.
with
Sure.
Uber, obviously,
Absolutely.
the issue with Uber, obviously, is that carpooling. I think they expected a little bit more people to pool in a car, and especially now that you have a pandemic, even if you order sort of normal Uber that you would have shared with like 4 or 5 people,
Mm-hmm.
4 people pre-pandemic, you will just be there by yourself or with someone you're driving with, which is then will cause car congestion, and this sort
It's
of
I
defeats the
think
purpose. But
Yeah,
we'll
but it's
see.
still better than every individual who wants to go somewhere with a car owning a car. So
True.
it's definitely positive for the world. Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, sometimes when you can pool with someone, you will pool with someone. Sometimes you just can't, and you go by yourself. It's better than
Right.
owning the car and like, because it's like with anything else you own. If you own it, you're gonna use it, and it's not a bad thing you're using it. I mean, obviously, if you buy it, you have to use it, or else you bought it for no reason. But like, just you're more inclined to use it if you have it. So I think from this perspective, carpooling is a solution through Uber and Bolt and all the other carpooling applications.
Yeah. Lyft.
Exactly. Okay, so
Is that the end of the
what's next?
report?
That's the end of the report. There's a lot of interesting stuff. As people have requested, I'm gonna drop the link in the description of the video after the video with the timestamps. And yeah, that's it for this topic.
Yeah. So just to close off, I just wanted
Hmm.
to show people how much Apple and how much just Apple has sales growth and how crazy it is compared to other industries.
Okay.
So let's just see right now. Here we go. Can you see this?
Yes, it's live now.
Insane. And this is not Apple
Yeah,
Apple sales growth in general. This is just the AirPods.
I think I've seen this
Bigger,
before, and it's crazy.
bigger, yeah, bigger than all of the sales growth of Adobe, Nvidia, AMD, Spotify, Square, Twitter, Snap, Shopify. Just the AirPods. So
Crazy.
that tells you, you know, what kind of arena Apple's playing in. Is baffling.
Yeah, dude, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. Like, dude, it's like a cult, you know. And
Yeah.
yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
So
yeah,
you wanted to talk also about the Fed and what they talked about last week
yes,
in regards to inflation. I believe that they said that they're keeping rates and they're looking to increase rates potentially a few times up until 2023 or something. So
mhm,
it was a sort of hawkish response, and the market sort of shook it off and just sort of, I would say, rebounded slightly, even in terms of growth stocks. Um, but
yeah.
yeah, what did you take
So
from it?
so first off, just like a short story. So the Fed, they get together every once in a while, and they have this dot system in which I think there's 18 people on the panel, and basically they're trying to graph like how they think the economy is going to progress, and they kind of dot where they think the inflation will be and what's the target and when they should act and stuff. So the consensus was before that they're going to increase rates in 2023. Now they said that they'll do it until up to 2023. So that means they're going to do some in 2022, which is next year.
Hmm.
So in the long term, okay, so just starting a bit from the top, the Fed has like a few responsibilities, right? Like they have to manage long term interest rates, they have to manage the employment rates, and stable prices in general, like controlling inflation. These are like their main functionalities, let's say, right? So this is what they have to do. So the Fed has come out and said that they're focusing on getting employment as good as it was before the pandemic. Obviously, that's like there's a long way to get to that, and that's why they're saying 2022, 2023, up until then, because they think that up until then the economy will start going as well as it's going right now, will slowly go on an upward trajectory, and by that time we'll get to 2019, for example, employment levels, which they said if we get there, they're fine with raising rates. Now, uh, the Fed has a lot of tools to do stuff, but for example, in this particular instance, we're going to talk about two of them. One of them is raising interest rates, which is, for anybody who doesn't know or wouldn't understand the perspective, is how much money you have to pay when borrowing. It's about those interest rates, not the one you get when you borrow, right?
That's right.
Or when you give money to the entity, right? So they can control that at a national level, which means that if they raise those rates, that means every credit card payment, mortgage, and stuff like that, those rates will go up. I think it stays stable for the ones you already. I think it's like a fractionary part. Like you have a
Hmm.
stable one, and then you have a fractionary one based on what the national rate is. So from that
Right.
perspective, is it will it will definitely stop other people from doing it, which is bad
Hmm.
because that means economical slowdown. Like it or hate it, the current economical system works on credit. If you can get credit, you can get the economy rolling. That's how it is. That's how we work with it. That's one
Exactly.
of their move. Their other move is assets purchasing, which is, in a nutshell, it's what everybody has heard about the Fred. Wow, the
The friend.
Fred, the Fred, the Fed printing money. Well, printing money, using that money to basically buy bonds or give loans directly to companies or to banks. Basically, they're inserting liquidity into the market by purchasing assets from banks or companies. In a nutshell, this is
Hmm.
their other tools. They're currently doing, if I'm not mistaken, 120 billion every month of these purchasing, which is basically diluting the dollar. Again, totally different story. It's one of their tools. They have been using it, and they said they're thinking about when they would stop using it. But
Mhm.
just like we said with the interest rates, if they do this, there will be economic slowdown, mostly because there's going to be less liquidity. The prices of stocks will drop. Companies will have less inflows and stuff like that. So obviously they're going to stop hiring people. So it's a whole cycle of stuff. I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. It's obviously a very heatedly debated topic, but it currently it's happening and they want to stop it. Just like with the child, when you take their toy, they're going to be angry about it, right?
Yeah.
So these are the two tools. They talked about using both of them like against the market. And honestly, I was expecting the market to have at least a negative reaction in the beginning due to the events like kind of being set in stone that they would happen, and then for the market to realize, oh wait, we still got 1 year and a half of going to the moon. But it didn't happen like that. Like the market was very iffy. Like some things went down, some things went up. Initially, growth stocks went up. So basically, growth stocks usually benefit from these lower interest rates, and then the high asset purchases. They benefit from it. So they went up, but now they're slightly down. So again, the market is still a bit iffy, and we're expecting some extra commentary from the other speakers in the Fed Council. So we're gonna get more information on that.
Mhm.
But they were doing this very interesting. I was watching JPow, as we like to call him, peace, talk about the whole thing, and he was giving a cold shower and then a hot shower, and he was like, "We're gonna raise rates, but not this year. We're gonna we're gonna stop asset purchases, but not this year." So he was doing, he was trying to spin it at least in a neutral, if not a positive tone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think so. If you think about the bull cycle, I think there's still some room left to run. But yeah, I'm super curious what's gonna happen next year and 2023, because if they start doing all these measures, like growth stocks will definitely get a beating. Like no matter how much you believe in the company, no matter how good the company is, these macroeconomic stuff will get the market beaten, because it's like I I don't care. I care about it, but it doesn't bother me, like whether the Fed purchases or not. But to a certain extent, hedge funds do, pension funds do. So certain the stocks will get definitely hidden. So then the question is, what do you do? Do you rotate out of them? Do you buy more value? You could buy more value because of inflation and then the rates going up. So yeah, it's interesting. But the whole point of it was, for the moment it's still neutral. Like the Fed is still supporting the economy to grow, which is good.
Yeah. And I think it's sort of a catch-22. You are, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So Jay Powell is in a sort of tricky situation, even though I do not in any way support the monetary policy that is currently happening. I do also understand that during a pandemic, fiscal spending has to, in some way or shape, go up. I guess people just disagree on how much it should and how much it shouldn't.
Yeah.
To sort of latch on to your explanation here, I think I wanted to add like a new and refreshing perspective to inflation and the debate around inflation, because oftentimes all that's discussed is the money that's being printed. So that's one key factor. Then you have
Mhm.
you have all kinds of macro variables, which is just different sort of key things that you can use to determine whether or not inflation will happen. And one of them being how much money is being printed, right?
Mhm.
Another being um, money velocity. So how much money is being exchanged.
Mhm.
And And there's another one that is often overlooked. And there was a really interesting Twitter thread by Michael Cow, his name is. And he spoke about another sort of key idea when discussing inflation that is often overlooked. And it's the geopolitical aspect. And let me just share my screen just to show. So Michael Cow, he took the approach that a lot of the issues that you find regarding inflation have to do with geopolitical aspects, and this is often overlooked because all we discuss is how much money. Primarily, what is being discussed is how much money is being printed. But in reality, when you look at previous points in history, it was often geopolitical. So just to sort of run through his take very sort of briefly, what he considers this hyperinflation, hyperventilation, he called it, like we're hyperventilating about hyperinflation. It seems to focus on the ratio between debt to GDP, and the current national debt of the US is 28 trillion, and the current GDP is 22 trillion. So the debt to GDP ratio there is at 127%, which is pretty high. And you could consider that being at an all-time high, actually, even above World War II peak.
Yeah.
And he argues that the main reason for the loss in the Reichsmark in Germany was not particularly because of just printing money or money velocity or any of these factors that we discuss heavily today, but that it was actually geopolitical. I don't agree or disagree. I'm just a student here, so I'm trying to, figure this shit out myself. But he then goes on to explain that, like I said, it is geopolitical, and that one key moment was when France invaded the Ruhr Valley, which is also a key sort of economical place for Germany, right? And France invaded the Ruhr Valley when Germany couldn't pay up their reparations anymore. And this was very important to what then happened afterwards, which was hyperinflation. So he argues even that geopolitical factors matter more than monetary factors when determining whether or not this country's currency is going to hold or not. An example is also Japan. Japan debt to GDP ratio is double that of the US.
Yeah.
And still not like groundbreaking inflation, right? And he's saying that it's because of geopolitical stability, right? One way to measure geopolitical stability is looking at US waterways, right? Is it intact? Because the waterways is what you use to ship cargo and ship resources and so forth, right? The waterways are also what you use to extract fresh water from, because that's what people need. We humans are made up of mostly water, which is still baffling to me. Sort of water talking to water. But looking at these kind of things is really important. And I didn't, up until that point, it's one of those things that are obvious, right, when you read it, but aren't discussed so much. So he then goes on to explain that you compare China's waterways, and they're very problematic. You have the yellow Yangtze River that is flooded all the time.
Yeah.
China is also fighting with India over, I believe it's a river or some kind of very important territorial space. And the U.S. waterways are still intact, and the freshwater supply is still there. So the waterway thing also goes back to something that we all heard about earlier this year about, or was it earlier this year or last year, the Suez Canal,
It was
where
this
that
year.
ship exactly. So where that ship sort of blocked the other ships from going through, and itself being able to sort of
Yeah.
circle around. And I don't know the actual stats, but it was several billion that were lost in that period, and people
I think
don't realize.
yeah, I think it must have been a lot more.
Yeah, and people don't realize how important that is for shit to actually work.
Hmm.
Because we just go out and go to the supermarket and buy the shit and just leave or whatever. But in reality, it has to come from somewhere, and it's through ship cargo. It's through some type of transport, through trucks and so forth. So all of these things have to be considered when looking at inflation. And if any of these kind of things breaks down or is in any way jeopardized, that will be also a key factor in inflation. And in his explanation, he would say that is the most important factor.
Hmm.
And um, and I was just really baffled by that. He goes on to then just to close off here. He goes on to then explain um, more geopolitical factors, like how well is the U.S. Cooperating with its neighbors, right? And then you have good relationship or semi-good relationship with Mexico, right? You have
Hmm.
a pretty good relationship with Canada, and you compare that with China, very hostile relationship with Taiwan, not so good relationship with South Korea, right? Japan, I mean Japan, Japanese people and Chinese people is it's troublesome. Um, and India, I mean they're pretty much at war. So all of these things do play a big factor in inflation. So and on the flip side, obviously, China has all of these great things going for them. I read that they're graduating more engineers than the U.S. They're graduating more engineers every year than the U.S. has. And a lot of these things make you think that China's doing a lot better. But what's happening in reality is that China is doing a lot better in certain aspects, but is yeah, quite behind in other aspects. And the
Yeah.
U.S. is naturally ahead of China. Um, and when I say naturally, I mean by having good waterways, by having fresh water supplies, by having food, water, energy, water ways, friendly neighbors,
Mhm.
oceanic buffers, and most importantly, a free market capitalist system that doesn't jail billionaires and
Yeah.
put them away and stuff like that. So yeah, that goes to say that inflation might actually be transitory, as Jay Powell was saying, based on um, additional factors that are often not discussed, and this one being geopolitical. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say regarding that. What do you think?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I think yeah, regarding inflation, there was always this interesting debate. Like it's not as simple as existing money supply. You print more, you get inflation. That's not how it works. For some reason, you would think it works like that, but it
But
doesn't.
this is what everybody keeps saying, and it's like, where is it? Like, come on,
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
it's not here. It's not here. And
so
regarding what I was saying, I'll just briefly go back to that. I think they had some employment numbers, and one of the I'm not going to use strong words. One of the signals for inflation is rising wages, and based on the
another one.
numbers they had on employment, they weren't going that up actually. Like they were
Yeah,
small single differences, which you kind of would expect after people have been given a check for a month, right?
absolutely.
For the past year. So obviously you're gonna have to give them some more money to start working. But there isn't a groundbreaking amount of extra money you have to give them. So where is the inflation? Because except in even J Powell was speaking about this in some fringe areas of the economy like lumber and like semiconductors and some other stuff where there definitely are for like supply chain constraints and materials and everything and backlogs of orders and all a lot of reasons, we're not seeing inflation, so it's not here.
We're not.
So there
Yeah.
has to be something more. And I guess the whole geopolitical status is, it's like it's America's weight being put behind the dollar, and you're like asking everybody what you gonna do about it, and they're like nothing, America, right? Because that it should be like that. Like people in Europe should be like, okay, I'm not accepting $1 for a euro anymore. They never did, but like, but they're not. They're like,
And
okay,
they're
yes,
still
America, of course, yeah, yeah, okay,
exactly. They're still
however
accepting
you
that.
want it.
Yeah.
That's how it
Yeah.
is. So it's
So,
like geopolitical military strength combined with a lot of aspects, and apparently there isn't substantial
yeah.
inflation here.
Yeah.
So
Military is another
makes
one
sense.
that that
Yeah, yeah.
that that I didn't touch on, like having the strongest military. And I want to be careful not to get the message off as if printing money or printing like 20% of all of the existing supply in a single year is not going to have damaging effects. And I don't think this is what we're trying to say. I think we're trying to add a little bit more nuance to the discussion, saying that it's not as simple as that. But the fact that the Fed is printing that much money in that short amount of time will come back to haunt them in one way or the other. Therefore, you should hedge your investments in alternative assets, and some of them, be in crypto, even while they're down right now. um,
Heavily down, I would say.
heavily down. I mean, oh my gosh, man, I'm bleeding right now, bro.
I'm sweating.
I
Not
mean,
yet
all of us
bleeding,
are.
but sweating
I'm
definitely.
bleeding, man. I'm bleeding out. But yeah, all my limit orders filled. For anybody listening, limit orders are orders that you can set up to automatically buy at a certain price. And I set mine up so that they'll buy at a really cheap price. And since the prices have been falling, they automatically fill. So you don't have to sit there and try and time the best timing to buy a certain price.
Yeah.
And I do this on FTX. It's a really good exchange, low fees. I know Adi uses Binance. Shout out Binance. So yeah, depends on what you're looking for in terms of fees and the amount of coins. FTX has less coins, but less fees also. Whereas Binance fees are a little bit higher, but the amount of coins you can have are much higher. So yeah,
And
check that out.
and they have a lot of ways to actually make money on your existing money, which is kind of
Yes,
cool.
yes.
Yeah.
So, but we'll get to all of that in the
Yeah.
next few podcasts. Maybe I'll just touch briefly on what's happening right now and why the prices is sinking so much. So I guess we can. I'll touch on it briefly. It's the 21st of June, Monday, and the Bitcoin price has fell to, is it 32,000?
Yeah. It's getting kind of low. It's getting kind of low.
Yeah. So maybe potentially hitting the 30K range. So what basically happened is something that was announced not too long ago, maybe like a month ago. I believe China came out and said that they're cracking down on cryptocurrency, particularly Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. And a lot of people were calling it as a bluff because China does this almost every year since the inception of Bitcoin. And yeah, this is the first year where they're actually enforcing miners to stop mining. So what's going to be interesting is how broad is this enforcement. There's already videos that are circulating online, but I would urge people not to just base all of their opinions off of a few videos. But those videos are online, and there are Chinese miners packing up, basically. Like they're standing
Oh
at
yeah.
the place, pulling out the cables and packing them in trucks. But what's even more hilarious is that I saw another news report about Chinese miners buying sort of space and rights to start mining in Texas.
No, dude, it's like it's real.
Yeah,
Like
they're shifting.
I
They're
yeah,
literally
yeah,
moving.
they're moving, which is
Yeah,
kind of again going a bit back, like you said regarding free economy. That's kind of a win for America. Like I don't know where they got the money from, but if they build that stuff in China and they're making money there and stuff, okay, now they're going to America, they're gonna be like they're gonna have to answer to some American level stuff, not Chinese. Like they won't be able to bribe their way. They'll have to like behave like an American, which honestly, and you can have the whole political discussion. I trust a bit America more, right? So from that
Yeah.
perspective, I was saying like a lot of times I don't trust that a lot of the mining was going on in China, but now that it's gonna be in the US, I'm a bit more optimistic that there won't be like some CCP level attack, like trying to force something.
Right, and it's a.
Because
I think there's a bit of a.
they're not under the umbrella of the CCP now if they're in the US. So
Right. And I think that's where China sort of shot themselves in the foot, so to say. But obviously, they have all kinds of things in the works, like their own digital currency and stuff like that. And it goes to show that the free market ideology of America is sort of winning out, because you have these Chinese miners migrating there because they have the freedom to do what they want to do there. Obviously, there will be regulatory action, and we're seeing it increasingly. The IMF posting stuff to guidelines for regulators to follow and stuff like that. So there'll definitely be regulation, but they have more freedom in the US to operate than they have in China, obviously. So we'll see what's going to happen. The US themselves there's been talks of a virtual currency, so it's hard to tell how these things will play out.
But it's kind of interesting. They're going all the way to the US. Like there are countries that are closer.
Right?
Like they could
Right?
go to
Yeah.
Russia. Like I'm guess you can get some free coal in Russia, right? You can power that baby up. It's actually cool outside. You don't need extra cooling. Why wouldn't you go to Russia? They're going to the US, right?
It is quite a
It's pretty positive for the US, all in all.
Yeah. So where do you think this is going? What do you think this means for Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin going to zero? I need to charge my phone, so answer to that.
Yeah, I'll go. I was actually there was a bit of fun. I was posting in an investor group I'm part of, and I asked a question like, "What's going to zero? Is it Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies in general, the dollar, or Palantir stock?" Because we have some Palantir fans there, and most people were voting for the dollar. So apparently Bitcoin is not going to zero. So, but neither is the dollar. So something must be going to zero, but we don't know exactly what it is.
Something's going to zero. Titan definitely. Titan went to zero.
Exactly.
Just some context for the listeners. So basically, there's this really successful businessman, Mark Cuban. He owns a basketball team. I'm not able to recall. Please don't shoot me, basketball fans. He was also a shark on Shark Tank in America, which is a business sort of investment show. And he's just very renowned in America. And recently he wrote a blog post about DeFi, a decentralized finance space, and crypto. And basically how DeFi sort of makes everybody a banker. It gives the opportunity for everybody to become a banker, shift money around, see where you can get the most yield, see where you can get the most interest, lend, borrow, do whatever. And it was quite impressive that a billionaire sort of gets into something that is considered so speculative and mostly sort of young tech guys are into. So I thought that was kind of cool. Some would say obviously a billionaire could do that because he's got plenty more time or whatever, but I doubt it. I would say a lot of people in this class wouldn't engage in things like that. They wouldn't sit in the computer and then start looking for the best yield on one of these crypto farms.
You'd think that, but look at it, dude. Zuckerberg is doing it. Musk is doing it. Jack is doing it. There's actually surprisingly tech billionaires actually do a lot of this stuff.
You might be
right?
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's more common than that. In
but
my just from my view, it just doesn't seem that common. But
yeah,
but the difference between Mark Cuban and them is that he wrote an article, a very accessible article in
yeah,
simple, plain English language on what he's doing there and what the space is doing. And I sent it to a few friends. I thought it was really interesting and stuff. Doesn't mean that I think he's the best trader in the world or something like that, but I just like the transparency aspect of it. And he has an Ethereum address where you can actually follow his trades.
mhm.
But here's the funny thing: you would think that a billionaire, right, would be making all the crazy money plays and making all the crazy yield and knowing where there's money to be made. But truly, what happened recently is that there was a report that Mark Cuban got involved in a coin um, with I think a six-figure amount called Titan, and this coin went to zero and he lost all of the money that he made. And it was just such a spectacular sort of fail. And it got even better because I believe he went on Twitter and was urging regulators to regulate crypto after he lost
Really,
his money on there. Yeah,
I haven't
which is
seen
kind
this.
of weak. Which is kind of weak from
Yeah,
somebody that promotes free market ideals so much. But a lot of people will say, "Oh, he had it coming for him," and people have Schadenfreude, so to say. Um, I still don't think that discounts. You know, just it being interesting that he writes a blog post for people to be able to read and learn about the space. And all in all, I think it's got one really positive thing about it, regardless, which is that you realize that crypto is such an interesting space where the playing field has been so leveled that even a billionaire can come in and try and play and lose everything basically. So he
yeah,
doesn't have, so as opposed to the stock market or many different types of games, right? Because we're on Legalized Robbery podcast, right? We talk about this shit. So as opposed to different spaces where a billionaire like him would have an advantage over you, the DeFi space doesn't seem to be that.
yeah.
So the playing field has been leveled, and he can have access to the same information that you and I can have access to. And I think there's a beautiful lesson in that. So there goes that.
Even like the 10% of teens who said they traded cryptocurrency. So basically, it's an asset class from teens to billionaires. That's kind of interesting, right? That has to be
That's pretty
interesting.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
stocks aren't as accessible. Like they're gonna get a lot more with Robinhood and eToro and all of these social trading apps and whatever, but they're not yet. But apparently,
yeah,
crypto is quite accessible. So yeah,
yeah. So it goes to show that it is really permissionless. You don't need permission
yeah,
to start trading any crypto. You need a little bit of money, and if you're trading on Ethereum, you need a lot of transaction fee money ready.
yeah.
um, I wanted to talk about quickly. I say quickly a lot, but then go on to talk like half an hour, man. I need to chill.
It's okay. It's okay. Come on.
um, I wanted to talk about semiconductors, and just for anybody listening, first time hearing semiconductors are chips, and the chips that make our radio play, make our flipping toasters work. What we're using to have this stream and conversation on both sides. Um, excuse me. They are the underpinning of our technological society right now. Um, and the the reduction in cost of semiconductors and chips um, gave or made it possible um, to have crypto, to have all of this tech that we're currently using, all of these apps we're using, all of the phones and gadgets and Apple Watches and so forth. So all of this is underpinned by chip manufacturing and increasing that chip manufacturing. And recently, what happened is that there's a shortage the majority of the chips that are being created for the world are also being created in China, um, and
Well, no,
an
in
area very
Taiwan.
close to China, Taiwan. Yes, but China itself does also a lot
Yeah,
of
they have some production as
semiconductor.
well.
But
Yeah,
Taiwan is the central place, so that's right.
I
And
think it's
I'm not sure how many.
I think it's like close to 50% of all the chips in the world, which is
Wow, crazy,
absolutely amazing. Yeah, incredible, like
crazy. Yeah.
super crazy.
And there's a book called Dune, right? And it's just a quick sort of run through. The book is about this kid who is sort of leading. He's leading his people to freedom, so to say. And one of the main tenets in the book is spice, and the spice basically runs the world. So it's like a natural resource, so to say.
Yeah,
And for us, you could say that's water, that's that's oil, there's many different things that make our economy work. And semiconductors have become sort of the new spice, so to say.
yeah.
They're up there with some of the most important things that we use. And there was an article by is it Ben Hunt? You know Ben Hunt? He's from, I think, this group of investors that let me just get this right.
You sent me the article, but no, I don't think I've heard of the guy, except for this article.
Yeah, so Ben Hunt, like very popular investor and very outspoken guy, and has a lot of interesting opinions and very critical of the government and things that are happening and so forth in investing. Yeah. And he's also created Epsilon Theory, where they discuss a lot of these things.
Hmm.
And he wrote an article that Taiwan is the new Arrakis, and Arrakis is was like a key place for this fictional world where the spice was held in, and it's a sort of metaphor to say that Taiwan is becoming strategically important in the world because, and this is the famous quote in the book: "He who controls the spice controls the world." And currently, this is in Taiwan. So given that these chips are so important for everything that we're doing in this technological world, there's political interest in it. So it's not just economic anymore. It's very, very political.
Yeah.
And China is fighting to get space in that. So all of this just to set the sort of stage for what we'll get into next, which is the semiconductor shortage and the opportunity in this space. So I think I'll lead the way a little bit. I'll try and fly through it as quickly as I can, and then Adi, you'll just jump in whenever.
Yeah, I'm actually, I want to make a remark here. So the thing with the whole interesting aspect of this, I'm not gonna go into the shortage itself, just like some overall stuff, like TSMC, which is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, is super important, and
Stock ticker alert.
yeah, 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 yeah. Dude, and it's like it's so interesting. Like everything they're doing, it's like rocket science on a granular level. Like it's super super precise. You have to have the best environments to do it in terms of like cleanliness and like being super airtight. Nothing has to get in there. Like if anything gets in there, the whole like line, the whole series gets broken.
Collapses.
Yeah, it's super 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 tight. You need super educated people. Everything is super high level. And for example, you mentioned China. Yeah, China manufactures some chips, but like they cannot get to the TSMC level, and
Hmm.
they're having problems getting people, although they're poaching them from Taiwan, but not everybody's willing to go there, especially since China has like a low key conflict with Taiwan in terms of like political and other stuff. And like some people who work in Taiwan for TSMC, like they're not willing to go to China. Some people are, but apparently not enough to actually get it running properly. And the whole thing with TSMC is you'd think this is because like maybe with China somebody outsourced it there, but it's not like that. It's like to a certain degree only they can make it this way as good as they
Hmm.
do it right now. So it's not like, oh, it's not interesting to us, we're just gonna outsource it. No, at this point the other countries don't have the capacity to make them as good as Taiwan does, which is super interesting.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add a link to a tweet on how difficult it actually is to excel in the semiconductor industry. And just like you said, you have one little mistake and the whole thing falls apart. The
Yeah.
the sort of the the room for failure in this industry is just like 0.00, like some crazy shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, hats off to anybody working in that industry. Like it's like a one of one. It's like flying a plane. You have no room for error at all
Hmm.
because they'll cost your life basically. But yeah, luckily in semiconductors, no lives are on the line or anything. But
Well,
it's just
actually,
that
they are if they're put inside of planes. So you have to be careful you make them right.
that's a good point right there. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just jump right into this. A second, let me just turn off Telegram. Was I sharing my screen the entire time I was looking to Telegram?
No, it wasn't turned on.
Okay. I was like, what? Okay.
Okay, now it's turned
So
on.
okay. Nice little cover right there. Okay. So this is just to show that there's different parts of semiconductors. Sorry, different types of semiconductors. Um, and the industry is divided between design, manufacturing, and packaging. And primarily, the design is in the Apple, Intel, Huawei, Qualcomm, and provided by or supplied by ARM. Uh, I can't even pronounce them. Xilinx and Synopsys, Zukin,
Okay, so this
and
okay. Let me just dive here a bit in. So what this basically this first part is trying to say is that you have the companies which are designing the chips. I actually did something super low level compared to this. You get like a circuit board, and you basically design like let's say the granular operations. I know it sounds stupid, but apparently when you try to actually do it granularly you can't just press a button and the machines does stuff. No, you have to code that stuff. So basically when they say chip design, it means that there's a company going there and they're making designs for these chips. So in the sense that they're not producing them, they're just putting like a plan for it, right? And then
yes,
the things on the bottom, they're types of architectures. ARM
yeah,
architecture, Synopsys, Xilinx. Xilinx, for example, is going to get acquired by AMD, and I think they make FPGAs, which is field programmable gate arrays, which is like super narrow focused types of processors. So this was the whole thing. Like they're using the technologies from the bottom to design chips, and these companies
exactly.
are designing them.
Yes, and yeah, so the supplies are very important, and it's like it would be a sort of meta play. And if I could make one recommendation out of these, it would be Lam Research, and I'll probably dive into it. I'll probably dive into them specifically in maybe next podcast episodes. But based on like just looking at their financials, looking at how they've been performing so far, they just have glowing numbers. Their PE ratio, the amount of debt, how much money they have, owner earnings, all of these variables that you use to determine whether or not a company is good with their financials and how much profit they're making. Lam Research just blows it out of the park. And even if that wasn't enough, they always trade below PE ratio compared to other people, other companies in that space. So they're incredibly undervalued currently. And it's a good buy for sure. So let's move on. We have the market share of the top semiconductor suppliers between 2008 and
Oh,
2018.
go a bit back. Go slightly back. Okay, so I just want to explain it a bit more. So then, after somebody comes up with a design, you actually have to manufacture it, which I think, I mean, you've probably heard the concept of foundry. So, for example, Intel, they do both designing and manufacturing, which means they have their own
Yes.
foundry. Now, the problem is with Intel, they haven't gotten the tech quite right, in the sense of they have designs, but they can't manufacture. You probably heard of the whole whatever nanometer debate. Like TSMC, like we were saying, has the capacity to do it, to do 4 nanometers or whatever, but Intel, I think, can only do like 10 nanometers. So it's all about having the technological know-how to actually make these things into existence. Like, in a certain way, Intel does not have the minimization technology of the components in order to make them that small, so they cannot produce it. They could potentially design a 4 nanometer microprocessor, but they're not
No,
able
no.
to produce it. Yeah. So, and this is super interesting, right? And the thing with the suppliers is they're put there in order to understand how many things go inside the whole the whole aspect of it, right? Because yeah,
Yeah.
you need, like we said, you need the containment, you need the materials, you need the pressure, you need the equipment. For example, I know ASML, which I think it's a Dutch company, right? I think I'm not sure exactly what the acronym comes from, but it's a Dutch company, and they produce some of the manufacturing equipments even TSMC uses, and they make like I want to say like 4 or 5 a year, and obviously they're booked in advance for, I think, a lot of years, because everybody wants to buy from them, but they're the only ones producing it, right? So that's crazy. So the whole semiconductor road is just a massive it's like a treacherous road with a lot of falls. Everything is limited, everything is super scoped, everything is hard. So yeah, and then the packaging is what you do with it at the end. How you bring it all together. I mean, I'm not going to say that that's less important, but it's probably not the tensest part from what we said before.
True, and depending on your investment style, if you're looking for a play within a play, oftentimes the play within the play is even sort of more stable and is will allow you to make profits or profits on your investment for a longer time than the super hot thing.
Yeah.
So an example is you can buy a wine brand, right? A stock of a wine brand, and it might go in fashion or out of fashion. But if you buy the people that manufacture the cork screwer or the cork itself,
Hmm.
you will forever be in business, and it will be stable for a long time. So that's something you can consider in terms of
Yeah.
packaging or assembly. So it depends on the investment style, because that kind of thing it won't give you, it probably won't give you as much profit, but it will give you stable and long-term profit.
Yeah.
So do your own research.
Yeah.
So so maybe we should add something here as well. What I find interesting too is that you see Intel in the designing and also in the manufacturing, and goes to show that Intel is more focused on this kind of thing. But I think what a lot of people don't also know, and what would be probably useful for people to know, is that Samsung is a really big player in the field, and Samsung is just known for selling phones. And what a lot of people don't know is that Samsung, as a primarily phone selling company, has a huge sort of other business that just pertains to selling and manufacturing chips. And recently we heard that Apple is getting into it, but Samsung has been doing it all the while. And Apple was getting into it just because it just made sense for them. And given how much of a reliance everybody else would have on TSMC, it makes sense that they would then, or sort of other semiconductor companies, it would make sense that Apple would do their own. So the space is going to be really interesting because this is everything you need for the things that we're looking for in the future, whether it's AI, whether it's self-driving cars, whether it's any type of wearable tech. All of these things are tied to the semiconductor industry. So
Absolutely.
let's go on to the next slide. Market share of top semiconductor suppliers, and this might surprise some people there. Um, Intel obviously is very prominent in all of this, right?
Mhm.
Next up is Samsung. This is what I was saying. Like Samsung is an entire other business apart from, aside from selling their phones. They're
Yeah,
really
of
next
course.
up there. There's a few that are probably lesser known. I'll just touch on the ones that are sort of more widely known. We know Qualcomm. Um, what I was surprised about was Toshiba as well. I didn't know that they were that into that. But just to give you a sense of the market share in the semiconductor supplies. And now on to AI chip sales.
Uh,
And
One more thing regarding the previous slide. For example, this whole presentation is not about processors. It's about the whole let's just say hardware side of things. So you have all types of integrated circuits. So for example, SK Hynix and Micron Technology, if I'm not mistaken, they might have some edge market share, but they're mostly doing memory. So they're
mhm,
doing only RAM, SD-RAM, VRAM, and stuff like that. So
niche.
this is, yeah, it's not necessarily niche, but rather not only processors. So you're not gonna see
Right.
it. You're not gonna see on your phone SK Hynix whatever RAM. No, they're inside. This is just like you were saying regarding the materials. Like your phone has more things inside than a graphics card and a processor, and yeah,
Yeah.
no, it has a lot of stuff inside, and RAM is definitely a super important part of that. And I was just mentioning like SK Hynix, like they're huge and they produce mostly memory. And same thing with Micron, if I'm not mistaken. I think Micron also does some storage, but
Hmm.
from that perspective, like it's a big market. It's not just
It's huge.
processors and that's it. It's a big
It's
market.
huge. Yeah. So the next one is then growth of AI chips market, which was also interesting to have a look at. And obviously, knowing AI chips is what we'll be using for autonomous driving. So if you're interested in the autonomous driving space and what's going to happen there, they will require AI chips. And if you're bullish on Tesla, you should probably be bullish on this kind of stuff too. And as we know about now, that the entire car industry is following the lead of Tesla with having electric cars, and they are all full of AI chips because they all will then have to have self-driving fleets and so forth. So and technology in them. So having a look at what the projections are for this industry is pretty impressive. So you look at 2018 all the way up to 2021, where it's close. I think it's getting close to 20 billion, and by 2027 you have somewhere close to 100 billion, and that's just for AI chips. So, like
Mhm.
Adi said, there's many different types of chips that are required, but this is just talking about AI chips. So when you hear the talk about AI and that's going to be the future, you cannot have that future without these chips. And yeah, speaking of cars, here you can see a sort of illustration of what or how the types of areas in the cars and the segments in them are going to be divided. So you have a segment space with ADAS, the aftermarket, the body of the car, chassis, EV, HEV, infotainment systems that we all know about, the instrument cluster, powertrain, and safety. And all of these are expected to grow, right? And as you can see, you don't see any minus here. So
Yeah.
all of them, all of these things are expected to grow.
I actually
Um, and
have
I
a
have to admit,
sorry.
I have to admit, I don't know shit about ADAS. I don't even know what that is. To keep it all the way real, I'm not acting like I know all this stuff. The main thing that I know is the infotainment system because I'm also invested in Roku, and I'm actually surprised that that is just 8.2%. But maybe that's because infotainment is already pretty prevalent in cars and
Yeah.
other transportation. But I see huge growth in infotainment, for example, because the more cars get autonomous, the more people need shit to do when they're in the car. And there was crazy reports about sort of researchers assuming that sex in cars will increase when when autonomous driving starts because this is one of the things people do
Yeah.
if they're alone in the back of a Tesla or whatever, which I thought was funny. But yeah, you can Netflix and chill in the back of a Tesla at that point
Yeah.
when self driving comes. So infotainment is going to be huge. So if you think that the future will include self driving, you should also believe that infotainment is going to go up because if the car drives itself, we need something to do, and most of the things that we
We're back.
do, yep, most of the things that we do are watch Netflix. You probably see it when you well, pre-pandemic, when you were commuting to work, you'll see somebody on their phone watching Netflix. So all of this will be in car, and you probably won't have to hold your phone in the back of a car. The screen will be at the back of the seat, just like in airplanes. And what's funny is I remember one time on a flight to America where I just had to go to the loo, and it was I think it was dark, like it was really late, and I stood up and I saw literally every airplane seat with just these sort of tiny lit up screens, and everybody was watching a different movie.
Hmm.
And it was crazy the way it hit me. And every time I think about infotainment and what that means for the future, I think about that moment. And it was really funny because everybody was having a different experience watching a different movie or whatever. But that goes to show that this is already here. When you're sitting in a plane, that is, for all you know, is autopilot. You just step into something and it's done for you. So the same thing will be in cars. Would you like to add anything to that, Adi?
No, just as you were speaking, regarding the percentages and stuff, I think your assessment regarding the infotainment is quite correct in the sense that we already have had like display screens in the car, so it's obvious like the growth wouldn't be as big, but I think it's gonna get bigger as we go further because, like you said, as we have autonomous vehicles, we're gonna have to spend our time somehow. And okay, sometimes we might bring our laptop or smartphone with us, but sometimes we might want to see more on the infotainment available in the car, which is actually
That's
quite
right.
an interesting play for Tesla and like other car manufacturers. How are they gonna monetize that? But I was just an interesting thing was regarding with the current chip shortages and for car manufacturers. I think it was either Ford or GM, and they said that basically they're putting in old parts in their new cars because they're not getting enough semiconductors, which it might
Wow.
work for certain aspects, like okay, maybe your ventilation is a bit more manual, maybe certain aspects, okay, they're not as high tech. I think, yeah, but then, for example, certain things are like super embedded in there, like, so as time goes by, you're gonna have increasingly more need for it, and they're gonna be more interconnected, so you won't be able to just like pull them out and put some old stuff in. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would urge everybody to sort of do their own research, but you would just have to type in semiconductor shortage and you'll see hundreds and thousands of articles regarding this. And it's a space that will be definitely pumped, because, like I said earlier, it's of political interest. It's so important to a technological society that it's not just purely economical anymore. You have, I believe it was in the UK, where they stopped the sale of a UK semiconductor company to some foreign country, and it was very rare that this happens, that a government interjects a sale. So it goes to show how important this is to political interests, even because you can be at the short end of the stick if you don't if you don't stay up to date on this kind of stuff as a government. Um, so the semiconductor manufacturing capacity by country, and yeah, so this is 2019, and as you can see, this is the sort of split you're looking at, and by far, South Korea and Taiwan are very high up. I didn't actually know that South Korea had a higher rate than Taiwan. I'm not even
Again,
sure if this.
this is everything, including memory, including
Yeah,
everything. So Samsung is
exactly.
Korean. So
Ah, thank
yeah,
you. This
yeah,
is why it's good to have a co-host, man.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
two
yeah, yeah.
brains better than one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so US and China are in a tie. But the thing is that China is exercising so much influence on Taiwan. They're doing all of this big dick swinging thing in Taiwan, where they're testing out different. I mean, you probably heard of those things where they're testing out different um, military
Drills.
exercises around Taiwan. It's kind of like this thing where guys get in cars and then they speed across or something and just rev the engine like crazy just to make some kind of statement.
Yeah.
And that's what China doing all of these military exercises around Taiwan reminds me of.
Yeah, but dude, look at that, man. The first three spots and arguably the fourth ish are all in Asia. Seriously, like the
Yeah,
US and Europe, dude, we're nowhere. We're
Europe
nowhere.
is so far behind, man. It's crazy.
Look. It's literally comparing like a continent or at least a union of states with a tiny country like Israel. Come on, man. As Joe Biden would
Crazy,
say,
right?
come on, man. But no, seriously,
Come
like
on, man.
it's insane. Like
Yeah, let me not even start. Let
yeah.
me not even start with productivity in the in Europe. um, yeah, we got gender studies.
No, they have them in the US as well, but
True, actually,
I,
predominantly maybe.
I
But
somehow I don't think they have them in China though.
but yeah, so Europe has a long way to go. But this was just to show how big the influence of Taiwan, for example, is, and just in general Asia, and that the rest of the world is relying on this. That when you hold your iPhone, that this is primarily made possible by these countries that you see here.
Yeah.
So, on to the next, semiconductor revenue by region. Again, this shows it even more clearly, maybe. All of the profit, all of the revenue in this region is in Asia. Yeah, I think it's all just doing sort of eye measurements. It looks like it's just
Yeah, at least.
triple that of what.
It's more than triple, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they're ahead.
If you combined America and EMEA, it would just reach half of what
Exactly.
Asia Pacific is doing. Crazy.
Yeah.
So this is also to show how of what the issue actually is, and to explain also what Adi was touching on before, that this industry is so hard, that the rate of failure is so high, that something that is so highly in demand, you have even less companies that you used to have in this space.
Yeah.
Like, just dwell on that for a second, right? Something that is so highly in demand, you actually have less and less companies in this space.
And this is actually in like a macro view of things. This is actually quite surprising because usually you see innovation where when there's new company coming in, but in this case, it's not about lack of innovation. It's just how difficult it is, and only few companies actually afford to get the equipment, to get the people, like to get the minds. And it's hyper competitive in those fields, in the sense that like if you make a 3% progress, that's wow. It's not like you're not making
Yeah.
50% progress in one generation. I think the Lisa Su was saying about some stuff regarding, did I send you the thing with the 3D designed chips for AMD? I think I did, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically they're
Recently,
trying to
right?
do
Yeah.
some 3D architecture for chips, whatever. I haven't delved into it, but point being, she said they're gonna have like a 15% increase in performance, and she was like, "Yeah, and that's about a whole generation of progress." And I'm like, "Yeah." So it's the thing with this is it's not less innovation, is it's super concentrated innovation. And yeah, we're getting, like, again, for people who know a bit more, we're getting close to like quantum physics and stuff like that. Like, literally in a certain ways we're going to have physics barriers to actually trying to minimize things more. And basically it's not all about minimization. There's obviously a lot of factors, but minimization has been one of the driving factors for performance, is fitting as many transistors on a chip. But yeah, it's super competitive field.
So what I would just urge people is just, knowing that all of this information that we just provided, and knowing that there's barely 20 companies that are doing this, you could create a pie, say on Trading 212, which is an investing app that we're using in Europe, or any investing app that you choose to use, maybe eToro, which is more international, I guess. You can fetch up a few stocks here and there, out of 18 of those,
Yeah,
and just let them sit and see what they do. Because like we've been showing so far, I guess the gist of what we're saying is there's an incredible demand, and there is no way to move into the future without this stuff. And
exactly.
it's so sought after that it's becoming political. This is, and I don't make too many sure bets and strong suggestions, but this is one of them. So if you believe in the crypto space, if you believe in autonomous driving, if you believe any of the sci-fi shit that you think is going to happen in the future, it's not going to happen without
Exactly.
semiconductors. So therefore, this is the best place to be in terms of investments.
I think
So
it's one
one
of,
of the best place to be.
yeah,
Sorry.
like, there nothing can happen without these. Like, you can't do anything. Like,
Yeah.
not dude, it's not even about the future, it's about the present. Like, try to imagine how many things you can do without technology today. Nothing. Like, seriously, you wake up, you check on your phone, okay, or you don't, okay, then you go to work. What do you work on? Oh, okay. So I work in a field. Okay. Do you drive any type of vehicle? Yeah, it certainly has microprocessors in it, or semiconductors. So, dude, it's everywhere. Like, it is
Yeah.
everywhere. Like, it's not the future. It's the present, and obviously the future, because we're not
It's the
gonna go back.
present and the future.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like you can't escape it. It's
No. Now, I mean, obviously, regarding investment, there's always, again, like we said earlier, it's about,
obviously
sometimes
there's
it's
winners
about,
and losers.
yeah, it's about macroeconomics. Like, for example, like, you'll be like, okay, I'm gonna put all my money into TSMC because they're the biggest manufacturers. Okay, China invades tomorrow Taiwan. Okay, that was a bad mistake, right? So obviously, like no, it's a really good place to put some money, but then again, it's not riskless. Nothing is riskless. And in this particular example, I think the whole geopolitical danger is much bigger than a lot of other aspects in the whole theme, you know. uh,
Hmm.
I wanted to add one interesting stuff, actually, piece of news. So first off, like we said earlier, Intel designs and manufactures chip. Whether you like them or not, you think they're be losers or not, doesn't matter. They're manufacturing some chips and they're doing it in the US. They have plans to open more manufacturing plants in the US. That's good. The US has said they want to support local manufacturing in terms of chips, obviously. Uh, Also, TSMC has said they're gonna open a chip plant in the US, and so have Samsung. That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
Like that's kind of bullish for the US in the sense that they're getting some know-how being shipped from Taiwan and South Korea into the US regarding these processes, which is really good for them.
That's incredible. Note of that's yeah, that's incredible news.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't know that.
Yep.
But it would make sense because it's like if TSMC is like okay, we're getting very hostile, um, hostile sort of a vibe from China. The
Yeah.
next best thing to do is either close shop there, because China can enforce shit. I mean, we've seen what's been happening with Alibaba. We've seen how they shut shit down, and
Obviously.
particularly Hong Kong being sort of British territory, so to say, and them just overhauling it. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we see any aggressive moves from China, so to say. So what you're saying is very important to be aware of the political climate, and if TSMC is going to move some of the manufacturing to the US, that's a huge win. And yeah, huge loss for China, unfortunately.
Dude,
But that's
in my military mind, I would be super surprised if they don't have some sort of last resort, pull the trigger option for the TSMC plants in Taiwan. Like
yeah,
if
they
Taiwan
need
doesn't
it.
do it as a country, I think America will be like, if they see that place being close to actually getting owned by Chinese people, I think they might go to the length of actually destroying them rather than letting China take control of them. I don't know. I
Damn,
don't know.
boy,
I don't know.
that's some wild fan fiction right there, my
Yeah,
guy.
it is.
Destroying them. You says destroying them.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Dude,
Demolish them.
like think about it's know-how, it's money, it's like equipment, like some yeah. But if they move some of that to the US, at least US will have the same technology, because again, at this point, it's about technology. Like these are stuff that US companies cannot replicate. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if they cannot in the absolute terms, or they cannot in terms of actually making it financially worthy. But from what it seems, like they cannot replicate it. So again, they
Yeah.
need to at least have their own safety option. So I think that's kind of cool. Like I think in the whole, even in the whole geopolitical stuff, the fact that America will have some TSMC plans, that would be good. Now maybe if China got some, that would also be good. I wouldn't be opposed. Like if anybody asked me, yo, Adi, do you think? Yeah, of course, yeah. Let China have some, if that would reduce the pressure, you know? Because nobody, seriously, dude, this whole thing with China and Taiwan, this is like, it's dangerous, and it's like there's a lot of pressure, and I think we're like the whole world has too much pressure for this whole aspect, you know. I think from this is like the whole thing with open source. I think this would be, I mean, you cannot open source everything, but in this sense, it's like we shouldn't be fighting over this in the absolute terms. Like I don't know, it's kind of like a very humane feeling in the way that, yeah, I mean, China shouldn't be trying to invade it, but then again, if they are, I hope nobody gets hurt and stuff like that, but people will obviously get hurt. So we might as well just like spread the knowledge with both parties implicated. But yeah, it's I hope nothing happens.
I guess I understand what you're saying. I guess anything that carries such importance in the way, you know, in the way a country works, or in the way countries in general in the world work, right? I think that should be decentralized, and having a center point for all of this kind of stuff, as you just said, is very dangerous. And yeah, and Taiwan has kind of found itself in that spot. But if there's more TSMCs, you know, sprinkled around the world, then it's not something to fight over anymore.
Exactly.
But yeah, one can only hope. I think this is a good note to end the podcast on. I
Peace
think
and love.
we gave a lot of value here.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. See you degenerates next time.
Not degenerates here, man.
Peace.
Have a good